big silence. The big silence.
All right, and welcome to the Big Silence. Today, I am very excited for our guest, Samson Odusanya. He is a coach, a healer, empowerment guide based here in Austin, Texas, of course, and believes his purpose is to support people and guide them into remembering their own power, lead them back to themselves, which I love. A lot of us need that right now. Samson is a world-leading health coach, a man of service, and supports many people in realizing their own power through holistic modalities of nutritional meals, fitness training, and mindset coaching. And as a wellness entrepreneur, he takes humble pride in not just his highly successful business as a coach and a mentor, but also in his primary roles as a dad, a husband to his beautiful daughter and wife. So welcome, Samson.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I don't know how I found you on Instagram, but I was following you for quite some time. And then our mutual friend Brent had you on his podcast. And I was like, I got to have him on mine. I want to have some conversations with him. And I have a lot of questions about what you do and the multiple things that you do. And so welcome here. I am honored to have you.
Grateful to be here.
There's a few things I want to talk about here.
Yeah.
Number one, breathwork. So if you're familiar with the Tone It Up community, I get a lot of questions from the women there about what breathwork is and how it is healing. So maybe we can even dive in there, and then we're going to dive really deep, and you might hate some of the questions I ask.
I'm open for anything.
Okay.
That's all right.
So explain breathwork.
Okay. So in the simplest way I can put it, because it's a term that's getting really popular. It's a practice that's really making its way. I would say back. Breathwork itself is just a conscious way to manipulate the breath, which is natural to all of us, to access different states, to access environments that could support in healing. One of the biggest ways is, in regulation of the nervous system, is in releasing trapped emotions, trapped feelings, and to support the body in expressing what we at times didn't know how to express because we didn't have the tools or the resources. So in the simplest way to put it, it's just a conscious way to manipulate the breath to access certain aspects of ourselves.
Right. So I've done breathwork only like 4 times. And it was very interesting. So there's a coach, my spiritual coach that I've worked with since 2017, Gwen Dittmar, introduced me to breathwork. Yeah. And to help heal my own trauma and get into my body. And it was quite an emotional experience. Yeah. And every time it's very different. And Gwen even would tell me, she's like, this is more healing than ayahuasca or similar to ayahuasca. Even during my experience, I was like, once I was out of it, I'm like, were you rubbing my feet? Were you lifting them? She's like, no. So why was I having that feeling of someone touching me or my body being elevated?
Yeah. There isn't one particular answer for that, just because everybody's experience, it's very nuanced. And I can see why she can say it's better, quote unquote, than Aya. I don't believe it's better. I feel Aya has its place, just like everything else has its place. But breath, just like Aya, you can access DMT through breathing.
Could you explain DMT for those who don't understand?
Yeah. So DMT is, in the simplest way to say, it's like the God molecule. And people access it through plant medicine, but it's a way where I would just say you pop into a state where some people meet God, their version of God. Some people, it's you're leaving this reality to access the bigger reality. And our body naturally produces it, depending on what state you're in. Some people have access to it more than others. Some people will need a bridge like plant medicine. And in this case, breath can do that with breathing. And this is why when you have the conscious manipulation of how you breathe, it depends on the style of breathing. So I'm not sure what she had you do, but based on how long you were doing it, the pace you were doing it.
It was 20 minutes, I think. It's like, and And
the transformational
yeah.
breath, the 2-part breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the power in that, probably why you felt what you felt, is because with breath work, one of my favorite things, one, is that everybody has access to it because we're all breathing. But two, it's a modality that can support in bypassing the mind. As the mind seeks to do what it does, for the insurance of our survival, sometimes the mind would resist simply because it may not know what's going on. Like, why am I breathing this way? Like, why my body's feeling this way? So you breathe enough in a certain pattern, right? And I call it the bridge. You breathe enough in a certain pattern to where the mind lets go and the body takes over. And then the body literally, we can express how it needs to. And also, the body knows exactly what to do if we're willing to get out of the way. So once the mind is out of the way, the body expresses, releases, let goes. You have an emotional experience. Some people feel, I've felt that in one of my sessions where it's just, I feel elevated. And that's because, on a very basic level, the intake of oxygen and also the dumping of CO2 can access chemical changes in your body to feel that way.
Yeah. So Bobby, my husband, is sitting next to me, my executive handyman. So, and you may not like me bringing this up, but this is the Big Silence where we talk about everything.
Yeah.
So once with Gwen, he was doing breath work with me in our home, and we were laying next to each other. And his experience, and I want, if you don't mind, sitting here for a moment explaining it. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
And maybe you can help answer some questions, because he was like, what just happened? I need answers.
What's up, Bobby?
All right, what's happening? So my experience was just a lot of crying, pain, but not tearing. Really just trapped down, arms, fingers crunched up.
There was screaming.
Yeah, yelling, just kind of being trapped, and just a lot of crying. Yeah. Screaming, crying. Let's say that. Yeah.
How did you, after the session, was it a surprise for you? Was it like, how did you feel after that?
I think it was a surprise to get to that point. I didn't have really any expectations for the experience, and I definitely wasn't expecting to be, bawling.
Yeah.
Even if I had emotion come up, I would expect, tear and be able to talk through. This was really heavy.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I felt okay, but it took a while. To get back to a normal state. It definitely felt lighter, just to let that go. But it was definitely something that there's probably a lot more to explore.
Yeah. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I relate in many cases where I've had experiences like that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm open generally. So even though I'm not expecting it, if it happens, it happens. But what I'm feeling into as you're talking about that is, imagine, I'm not sure, and please, feel free to let me know if it's not accurate or not. But what I'm feeling into is, imagine years and years possibly of not expressing or not crying or not yelling, right?
Yeah.
Which is, as humans, very natural to us. I think of my daughter, she's 3, and all the colors of herself, the laughing, the crying, the yelling, the tantrums, right? And as long as we don't interrupt that, right, she gets right back to where she is. But now imagine as we grow, right, depending on our upbringing, we didn't have the tools, the resources, the assets, the education to know how to properly express that. Or when we did, someone that we looked up to made us feel right or wrong about it. And then now it's this journey or this practice of suppression.
Yeah.
And then you go into a practice like breath work that literally your mind's like, okay, nope. And then now you're opening the door to your body to now let go of years and years and years and years and years of tears and feelings and emotion that hasn't been let go of, that I can say is natural. right? When I do sessions with people, for me, the biggest thing is setting context. I overset context so people can give themselves the permission to feel safe to go to the places they need to. But especially after, if you have practiced a certain way of being or a certain way of holding it together, and then all of a sudden you open the door, it's just this new world, right? Now you get to relearn what life is like for you now that you've opened this door. Right. It's very nuanced. But I think this, based on what I'm hearing you say, that's the best way I can explain it.
It was an experience, and there was definitely no conscious control available for me to stop that, let's say.
I've had an experience like that where I was weeping, like weeping, like soul crying, right? And I remember feeling people like in the area, and at this time my mind's thinking like, what are they thinking about me? Like I'm just crying like a little baby, and I can't stop it. And the more I tried to stop it, the more
it came.
I couldn't. And again, the more we just allow it, the body will do what it needs to.
Well, thanks for that. I'll
Absolutely.
have to link up with you for a session soon. Continue that one.
Let's do it. And something I want to add to that too, our need to make sense of something. Right. It's especially if the mind wasn't there, and then it comes back after you're done. It's like, okay, I'm coming back to my job. My job is to see, taste, smell, touch, feel, assess. A big experience like that, after it comes back, it's like wondering what just happened. So the initial thing is to make sense. And sometimes you don't need to make sense of it, and just let it happen.
And so it is. So I have a question, because I got into meditation and fitness as a healing process for my own trauma. So what is the reason you're why did you get into breathwork? What is your past? What happened in your childhood? What are you healing? And then you're healing, and then helping others heal.
How long do we have?
As long as we want.
So same exact thing. It was my own journey. I grew up in an environment, and I say this based on the way I took it on, as one that was emotionally, mentally, physically hostile. At least what I took on. It wasn't all bad, quote unquote, but my parents split when I was young, and not having a relationship with my father for a chunk of my life, and being raised by my mother for most of my life. And I would say experiencing, the reactions of what it's like when hurt people hurt people. It took a toll on my mind. So my experience growing up was one that just lacked confidence, low self-esteem, confused, indecisive, didn't trust myself. And while that was happening, there's also this part of me that would tap me on the shoulder to just keep going. There's this seeker aspect of me. So I think I was like maybe 7 or 8 when I noticed that there was something different about how I experienced the world. I would watch people, and I was just very interested in learning what made them like tick. And I'd watch people cross the street or watch people walk on the sidewalk. I'm like, I wonder what that person, like, what's going on with that person, right? And then as I got older, I would try to stoke the fire, but because of the energy in my household, my mom, I love my mother. My mom was such a big presence and a big energy that it was like her way, right? So it didn't really give me as much freedom to explore. And then 11th grade in high school, and I'm just like speeding through all of this. 11th grade in high school, my mom got deported back to Nigeria. And that was like a really, really big boulder in water for our family. It was. So imagine the rock of our family. Like, she was the one who kept it together. All of a sudden she was deported, and, you know, it's been 17 years since I've seen my mother. I was just talking to my brother literally at maybe 1 a.m. last night, and just, he was feeling the waves of it because she was gone when he was 2 and he's 19. So that was like a gift and a curse. And the curse was that my mom was in here, but the gift inside of it, which is almost scary to call it a gift, was that it finally gave me the freedom to now ask questions and seek in ways that I haven't sought. So that led me to reading books, searching different, spiritual practices. And because I played football in high school, that simultaneously after high school led me to consistently work on my physicality in the gym and stuff. So that was, I feel, the closest and the easiest door for me to go, which is like my health. But then the place I was doing it from was not healthy. It was from a place of seeking validation or a place of filling a void. And then I worked in a hospital for 7 years as an ER tech, right? An orderly, then ER tech. And that was one of the perspective shifting experiences of my life.
Just from everything you witnessed.
Yeah. Coming, like, literally was in front of death hundreds of times. It's crazy to say, but I was part of a lot of people's final moments. Yeah. And that shifted a lot for me. It made me ask, at 18 years young, it made me ask a lot of questions, and then my come from changed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So as I did that more and more, the body led to the mind, and then the mind led to, deep into my spiritual practice. And then I got to a place where there wasn't enough books I can read. There wasn't enough seminars I can go to. Like, meditation wasn't doing it, at least the place I was at. And then, like Bobby explained, I realized that there was still stuff trapped in my body emotionally. And I realized I wasn't as connected to my emotions, especially as a man, that more than like I would like to. So, yeah.
Do you have a relationship with your mom? Like, you haven't seen her in 17 years, but you talk.
We talk often. I mean, huge part of my healing journey as well was being able to work on that relationship, for sure.
And I want to talk about your men's work, because you are really focused on working with men. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times, and even I'll bring Bobby into this, men don't talk. They don't let their emotions out. Yeah. Women, we're like, we're on, and we're very open to therapy. We're very open to everything. So can you explain a little bit more how you got into your men's work?
It's so funny you bring this up, because it wasn't something that I pursued as a goal or intention, saying, oh, I'm going to do men's work. It was everything I feel has been a reflection of my own journey. 2 or 3 years ago, at the beginning of the year, I set an intention for the year that I wanted to deepen my relationship with other men. I've always had a relationship with men growing up. I had friends, but it was surface, right? And I had no issues with that. But the more and more I learned myself, the more and more I, traveled, inside of who I am and met parts of myself, I realized there's a lot of depth to me. And that's one thing I noticed, at least for me, that didn't exist in my friendships. Some of them, right? Because we would have really deep conversations, and that's where I thrived. And I could also exist in the surface. But for me, I really, really like to go deep. So when I set the intention to deepen my relationship with other men, I also realized who I was as a man was highly affected by my relationship with my father, right? Because he's the first man in my life, and because he wasn't there, my experience was almost. If you ever watch Power Rangers, it's like, so Bobby, I think you watch Power Rangers.
Bobby is smiling and nodding over here.
So there's this, they call this a Megazord, and it's 5 of them, and they combine all their strengths and assets to make this one big, Zord, a Megazord that they call it. So I would literally pick, right, bits and pieces and parts from other men that I was inspired by to put my version of what a man is. But then at the end of the day, it still wasn't me. So when I really set this intention, I don't know how it happened, but just men that I knew I needed or God knew that I needed were just pulled to me. And I started to notice um, being around them, it had me see myself in a way that I've never seen myself. They would call me forward, not call me out, but call me forward in ways that they saw and I was unaware and afraid to step into. They were reflections of me and vice versa. So when I was growing in this environment of men who saw me and didn't see me for any other reason than to see me, it almost had me step more into who I am, had me accept more of who I am, had me really start to call forward these unaccepted parts that I have, stuffed away because this person said, you shouldn't be doing this as a man, or you shouldn't be doing this as a man. So for me, it was my environment. And then it was just something that naturally happened. I quote unquote fell into it. But because I started to see myself, because I started to express myself in a certain way, people with like energy are called to that, right? They're called to that. Something else I will add, like last year was a very big year for me in meeting myself for the first time.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So when I speak about the relationship with my father, last year, I would say the beginning of the year, almost like second quarter of the year, there was this moment. So we had just moved to Austin, my wife and my daughter, and new city. My wife grew up in California, so like her leaving and picking up and leaving, like it wasn't all of a sudden, but all of a sudden was big for her. My daughter is, 2 at the time, so she's now having to adjust. I could adjust. So our nervous systems are like, looking for regulation. We're looking to like just be able to settle. Amongst that, there was this day where I woke up with swollen lymph nodes, and I'm like, I'm a healthy individual. Like I do my deal when it comes to my health. So for me, I don't go the physical route right away. I immediately go to, okay, like what is going on in the unseen that is making this happen? So about 2 days I dealt with that. And the next day or the day after, I get a hit, call your father. I'm like, okay. And it was loud. And I hadn't talked to him in about 4 months. So I reached out to him. We caught up. And my intention of the conversation was to get in his world and really get to know what happened from his perspective with him and my mom. And we had a conversation. And for me, I'd had a conversation with him about 8 years prior, but it was from a place of hurt, resentment, like being a victim. And this place was a lot different, I think. One, because I'm a dad. I was married, so my listening was deeper. I almost felt like I was in his shoes. So we talked, and he shared his side of the story for the first time in 28 years.
Wow.
So when he was talking, I literally started to see myself in him. It was almost like that conversation or that thing that my little boy was waiting for his whole life. And immediately there was this sense of just not just forgiveness, but this wave of just empathy, right? And just seeing him for him doing the best that he could with what he knew and had at the time. And the reason why I said it felt like I was meeting myself for the first time is because what I now knew about myself, based on how my mom painted him, and that my identity was wrapped up in that. And when I finally spoke to him, not saying it wasn't accurate, but there were some inaccuracies there, and it made me really look at like, oh, well, who I think I was or what I thought I was may have not been the truth. So this really gave me an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and start to choose, right? And not just choose, but remember who I am, who I was as a man, and start to kind of unlearn a lot of things that I didn't need anymore. Yeah.
Have you done a lot of, obviously, then like inner child work and nurturing? Have you been to therapy?
I've done my
your own version.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different ways of therapy, and I'm down for everything.
And a lot of the work that we do with men.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so the work that you do with men, it's here in Austin.
Yeah.
And what is the biggest transformation you see? Because I feel, and I just keep throwing Bobby on the bus here, but men feel really lonely. And I feel like what you're doing makes men open up. And what is the biggest change that you see in men who then can take away that barrier, that wall, hug each other, talk to each other, support each other? Like, what is the biggest change that you see?
So the first thing is to look at the reality of what it's like for men right now, or what it's been. And this is my perspective, right? Even through my own lived experience, there aren't that many environments for men. One, to just be men. Two, for men to express all of themselves. Three, for men to share what is deeply going on with them. Four, for men to not be held to this idea, right? This idea that society has put out there for who and what men are. And some of the biggest transformations that I've witnessed, because we do a myriad of things, the Empowered Brotherhood, myriad of things. But one of the most powerful things is to literally have an environment where a man can come, we can welcome him, we can welcome all of him, and he feels safe enough to just put it down. What I mean by put it down, whatever is heavy on his heart, heavy on his spirit, to put it down. I have this, because I think a lot, right? I like to connect the dots. As humans, we have this need to belong. And oftentimes, this is even through my own experience, where when I'm going through challenges, or I'm going through some really heavy things in my life, I'm not sure if you can relate, but there's an aspect that sometimes I feel like I'm alone, right? And when I feel like I'm alone, I don't feel like I belong. So there's now this ebb and flow of feeling alone, not belonging. And the more I do that, the more I put myself on an island.
Right. Yeah, I understand that too. And that's why I started the Big Silence, because the more you talk about it and you share your story and you're like, oh, you have the same, you're the same, you're the same, we're all one. And the more then that creates the community that supports one another. That's
exactly.
And then the healing begins. Being open like that.
It happens through connection.
Yeah.
Healing happens through connection.
Well, so, I was just, for so many years, nobody talked about anything. It's like, I'm good, doing great, everything's perfect. But then you're just so repressed. And that causes depression, anxiety. Yeah, go into your own island. That's not healthy for your body, for your mind. And so I think it's so important. And I think what you're doing is so important too, to open up that conversation and that connection.
Yeah. A huge part of it too that I feel is that there's this one-sidedness that's presented to the world, or we've been taught to present, the highlight reel, right? And we've not been taught to highlight the real. Right. And there's two sides to one coin. There's amazing things going on, but also share. And it's not to be a sounding board for, heavy energy and stuff, but it's like the other side, because they need to coexist. Right. So when you're pulling the island and you think you're the only one, it gets heavier. But then when you realize and you get invited into an environment in a circle, and you put it down, and then you look around and you look into the eyes of another brother or another person, and they have their hands raised, or they're nodding their heads, or you could just see in their eyes the agreement that, oh, I'm not the only one. It immediately, what weighed you down immediately, just it dissipates, because you see that, one, I'm not the only one, and two, the sense of not belonging now you belong. Now you feel, oh, okay, like nothing is quote unquote wrong with me. I'm not broken. Like none of us are broken. We just need to express right? What's going on? We need to put it out there. We need to talk about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely, no one is broken.
No one's broken.
We're healing.
We're waking up. Yes.
We're waking up and we're healing.
Yeah.
So from that, I wanted to talk, kind of transition into, and thank you for sharing all of that very vulnerable information and things about your life and how you got here. But I would love to hear, what is your fitness routine? Because Samson's Strength on Instagram, you're very fit, and it is your, what is your perspective on fitness? Yeah. Why you do it? Why you work out so hard?
Yeah.
What is the why behind that?
Really, really good question. As I stated before, it was it wasn't from a healthy place. It was from a place to seek validation. So it was more from the outer end. And then over time it changed. The very first why was to be healthy. And of recent times, because I love like the etymology of words, I recently learned that healthy means whole, right? The root word of healthy means whole. So it's to be healthy in all areas. And I started to realize the relationship between my body and everything else. Like when I would take care of myself, everything else was better. It enhanced everything. And then over time it evolved, right? When I'm healthier, I'm a better human. When I'm a better human, I'm a better man. When I'm a better man, I'm a better husband, a better father, a better friend. So that's my why, is just to put myself in a position that enhances everything that I am and everything that I do. Now, as far as routines, it's evolved over the years. It's changed. I'm somebody that I don't like getting bored.
I get that.
And at the same time, I'm also someone that, because as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, because I learn from my environment as much as I can. Like I'd work out and I'll talk to a 70-year-old man, see him still active in there. And, I'm inspired by him. And I'm like, okay, cool. How can I bring seeing him 40 years for me from now into what I do today? So now what I do, it's more athletic focused and more, as best as I can, moves and things that support my body and also things that are life applicable. Right. So it's like this relationship with like me prepping myself, putting myself through challenges so I can be stronger in life as well. And at the same time, something I realized about myself, working out is deeper than just the physicality. I move a lot of energy. That's one thing I notice about myself. I move a lot of emotion. And when I don't work out, for me, I don't move it. So working out has become, it's become a way for me to move like emotion and energy. It's a way for me to get it out, because I have a lot of it. And if I don't put it or direct it towards something, now I stay up all times of the night. I'm really like reactive because I haven't used it. So working out really supports me in being able to move energy and ground myself.
Yeah, I agree. And like my workout habits have changed over the years. I used to be a triathlete in my 20s. Don't get me to do an Ironman these days. I can't even run. But now I love, and then, it was like HIIT and this, but now I love yoga, but I want to be strong. And it's not about the physical body. It's about the mental for me. And, we always say like, you never regret a workout. And especially the last 2 years, you all know what we've been going through. I had a lack of motivation and I did not work out. And and then I got back into yoga, but then I wasn't strength training. I wanted to be strong. So that's why I have Brent come to my house 3 days a week. I'm like, make me lift weights. But then you feel so much stronger. Yeah. It's just, you feel strong in your mind. And that is the most important thing about physical fitness for me, because then you have the more energy, you have the creativity to live your best life and do everything that you want to do. So it's really important.
Yeah. And the body's a really big access point to everything. More and more as I'm working out, I'm being schooled in my inner environment, being schooled in being able to truly build a relationship with my sensations and my emotions, even while I'm working out. And it's this dance that I'm learning how to, dance with my breath and what I'm feeling and where I'm feeling it, and just be able to, it's just solidifying this connection with my body. And the more that happens, the more I can trust myself, just even through my body, and everything else gets better too.
Yeah, that's the important thing. When you're working out and you're working out hard, it makes you be present.
Very much so.
And so many of us are going through life, just your thoughts are everywhere. So between working out and staying present, breath work, meditation, all of those things, it's so necessary, and it's the natural medicine.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you something. So we recently, with the Tone It Up community, did a survey, and the ladies have spoken, and they have spoken.
I'm waiting for this.
They actually wanted to do more workouts with men. And there's also been a request for breath work. And I'm putting you on the spot, and you can say no. And then all of the millions of women are going to DM you and be like, what the fuck? But would you come on the Tone It Up Instagram for a live and go through a workout with me here at some later moment and do some breath work?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yep. Let's do it.
He said yes. He said yes.
Let's do it. Yes.
And then one last question I have for you, because it's the big silence and breaking the silence. Is there anything last that you want to say? Maybe something you haven't spoken about before, advice that you haven't given before, or an emotion that you just want to put out there?
What's coming forward for me right now is for me in particular, it's very challenging not to feel what's going on collectively. The transitions that a lot of people are moving through, the shifts in identities, people meeting themselves for the first time, people getting to know who they are, people reprioritizing what really matters to them, people connecting with themselves, people pulling away from ideas and ideals of what they thought the world was. There's a lot of change happening, and the message I have is for people to find an anchor, whatever that is, or something they could connect to that reminds them that it's okay. It's going to be okay. And it always works out.
Thank you. You hear that? All right. I hope everybody soaked that in, because it is the truth. And then lastly, where can we find you?
On Instagram currently, at Samson Strength. That's SAMSONS_STRENGTH.
And we will have all of this in the show notes too. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for your vulnerability and opening up and having this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Karina. Appreciate you.
All right.
The big silence. The big silence.